What if the most dangerous books in human history were never burned, only locked away? What if, beneath the polished marble and golden mosaics of a city-state no larger than a village, there exists a repository where entire stories of the human past sit sealed, waiting for a key that few may ever hold? Imagine a corridor of iron doors, each stamped with papal seals, each leading to corridors of paper and vellum that stretch farther than a person can walk in a day. The rumor has always been pulsing in the shadow work of scholars and rumor mongers alike. Letters from emperors, inquisitorial registers, petitions from condemned scientists, scrolls that contradict the official narrative. The idea is intoxicating and terrifying, not because truth is absent, but because it has been restrained. Tonight we stand at the threshold of that restraint. We will listen for the hush that falls when a vault closes. We will ask why the guardians of faith would choose to cage knowledge instead of setting it free. Beneath the Renaissance splendor of Vatican City, beneath the frescoes of Raphael and the echoes of the Sistine Chapel, lies a world that very few eyes have ever seen. It is called Archivum Secretum Apostolicum Vaticanum, the Vatican Secret Archives. The name alone stirs the imagination, but its meaning has been misunderstood for centuries. In Latin, secretum doesn't mean mysterious, it means private. A collection not for the world, but for the Pope. A library not of fiction, but of forbidden truth. For more than 400 years, these archives have remained sealed from public access, stretching over 85 kilometers of shelves containing more than 35,000 volumes. To walk its halls is to walk through time itself. The Inquisition trials, letters between kings and popes, confessions of heretics, even Galileo's trembling defense of his discoveries before the church. Yet only a handful of scholars, hand-picked, monitored, and sworn to silence, have been allowed to enter. They are permitted to request a few specific documents at a time, never entire collections, never to browse freely. The rules are strict, almost ritualistic, and that is where the tension begins, because the world outside wonders, what truth needs so many locks? In 1612, Pope Paul V declared that these archives would be separated from the Vatican Library, forming a distinct chamber for what he called the Pope's private memory. It was a move that seemed administrative, but it changed history. By separating the documents of divine authority from those of public knowledge, the Vatican effectively divided truth into two realms, the visible and the concealed. The visible truth is what we are allowed to know, the canonized version of faith, carefully curated and illuminated in gold. The concealed truth lies behind those iron gates, letters that may contradict doctrine, maps that redraw the ancient world, chronicles of contact with civilizations long forgotten, or records of theological debates that never saw daylight because they questioned the foundation of belief itself. In 1881, Pope Leo XIII made a monumental announcement. He would open part of the Vatican archives to approved researchers. It sounded like revelation, a gesture of transparency. But the reality was more subtle and far more calculated. Only a fraction, less than 1%, of the archive could be seen. The rest remained silent, a silence so thick it became part of the mythology itself. To this day, even the term Vatican Secret Archives has been rebranded. In 2019, Pope Francis changed its official title to Vatican Apostolic Archives, a symbolic attempt to remove the word secret. But the rebranding did nothing to lift the shroud. The mystery, after all, is not in the name. It is in the nature of what is withheld. The Vatican insists that there are no dark conspiracies within those vaults, no evidence of extraterrestrial life, no proof of Jesus' hidden bloodline, no map of Atlantis. But that is precisely the paradox. Every denial from the Church only deepens curiosity because secrecy itself is a confession of value. No one locks away what is worthless. What is protected beneath those marble floors may not be alien bodies or lost continents, but something far more dangerous. Context. Context that could reshape how humanity understands itself, its origins, and its gods. Consider this. Among the known documents are thousands of correspondences between the papacy and every major ruler of Europe, from Charlemagne to Napoleon. Letters pleading for mercy or demanding obedience. Orders for crusades. Records of execution. These papers form the nervous system of Western civilization, and whoever controls their interpretation controls the story of the world. So what else is kept beyond reach? Scholars have speculated about lost gospels, writings from early Christian sects that describe a Christ very different from the one enshrined in dogma. Some whisper about manuscripts from ancient Alexandria that survived the library's burning, rescued and hidden within Vatican walls. Others believe the archives contain early astronomical records that predate the Church's cosmology, or suppressed archaeological findings that link pre-biblical civilizations with the lands of Canaan and Egypt. Whether these claims are true or not, one fact remains. Every religion guards its mysteries, but only one guards them with a vault. The deeper question is not what is hidden, but why. Perhaps the Church does not fear what these documents contain, but what they might cause if unleashed. Knowledge without faith can be a blade without a handle. The archives, then, become a fortress not just of paper, but of power. A power built on controlling the timeline of human memory. For centuries, priests, emperors, and inquisitors have known that truth is not always revolutionary. Sometimes it is destabilizing. A single letter revealing political manipulation, a gospel implying Christ's humanity over divinity, or a record proving alliances that contradict moral purity. Such revelations could shatter the delicate balance between faith and obedience. The Church, in that sense, behaves less as a keeper of lies and more as a curator of reality. Imagine a dimly lit room, lined with shelves of bound vellum, where the air is thick with dust and candle wax. At the far end, a wooden table sits beneath a single lamp. A scholar bends over an ancient script, guarded by two Swiss soldiers outside the door. He reads by the hour, copying by hand, forbidden to photograph or scan. When his time expires, the document is taken away. The door closes. The silence returns. The Vatican Vault does not reveal itself through discovery. It reveals itself through absence. What you cannot see becomes the loudest presence of all. If history is a tapestry, the Vatican holds the missing threads. Threads that could change the pattern we believe in. Because every story humanity tells about its origin, morality, and destiny passes through one filter, the Church. And the vault is that filter's heart. It is the guardian of contradictions, where faith meets knowledge, where revelation collides with record, where light and darkness are one. And somewhere, behind a sealed bronze gate stamped with a papal crest, lies a truth that was never lost, only locked away. There is a place beneath the Vatican where the air does not move. It smells of parchment, incense, and the faint metallic trace of centuries-old keys. When the last echo of the upper basilica fades, all that remains is the hum of silence, as if the earth itself is holding its breath. This is where our descent begins, not through myth, but through memory, not through fiction, but through what the Church itself has chosen to keep unseen. The corridors stretch endlessly, carved from pale limestone, lined with gates of bronze. Each is marked with symbols, the crossed keys of St. Peter, the papal tiara, the Latin initials of forgotten custodians. Beyond them, the light thins into shadow, and shadow thickens into mystery. And though this is said to be the most secure vault in the world, it does not feel like a prison. It feels like a tomb, not of bodies, but of truths. The first chamber is silent except for the creak of leather bindings. This is the room of edicts, the Church's book of law, a record of obedience. Here, scrolls detail every anathema ever declared, every soul condemned, every idea excommunicated. The Inquisition's sentences lie here like ghosts in ink. Galileo's trembling handwriting, begging the Church to reconsider the movement of the planets. Giordano Bruno's final words before he was burned for claiming that the stars were suns and the universe infinite. Their pages are brittle, but the words still burn. Each decree reveals not cruelty, but fear. Fear that knowledge might rival faith. It is here one understands that the Church did not fear science itself. It feared what science might unmask, that divinity might not dwell above, but within. There are letters between bishops debating this very crisis. If man is not the center, how shall the heavens bear witness to God's design? No answers written beneath, just the papal seal, heavy, final, absolute. A corridor of marble arches opens into a vast circular chamber, its center illuminated by a faint golden light filtering through a grated ceiling. This is the Hall of Correspondence. Here rest the letters that shaped empires. There are exchanges between emperors and popes, wars decided over ink, kingdoms offered for blessings, blood traded for grace. Among them, a letter from King Henry VIII, pleading for annulment, another from Queen Isabella, declaring her gratitude for divine sanction of conquest. But deeper in the hall, the tone changes. Letters written by missionaries from the New World whisper of things they were forbidden to describe. Civilizations whose rituals mirrored Christian sacraments long before missionaries arrived. Baptisms by rivers. Cross-shaped idols predating Christ. They speak of temples carved to mirror constellations, of gods who descended not from heaven, but from the sky itself. These correspondences were sealed, marked non divulganda, never to be made public, because to release them would fracture the idea that the gospel began in Bethlehem. Behind a gate engraved with a single word, Xylem, lies a darkness unlike the rest. Here no torches burn. The light must be brought in. Within this chamber of the fallen heavens are manuscripts so fragile they are kept within glass vaults, preserved by dry air and eternal shadow. They are said to originate from the early Alexandrian scholars, and even older Semitic traditions, describing the age before Adam. Fragments mention beings of light who descended among men, teaching language, metallurgy, and the reading of stars. Other texts speak of a great rebellion, a war in the heavens where divine beings took flesh and mingled with mortals. This is knowledge echoing the Book of Enoch, banned, silenced, buried. On one tablet, written in Syriac, are words that seem to contradict Genesis itself. The first breath was not given to Adam, but reclaimed from him, for there was life before clay. It is unclear who wrote this, or how the Vatican obtained it, but its translation is classified. Those who have seen it are said to lose their post or disappear entirely. Whether truth or legend, it reveals something profound, that the Vatican's silence may not be denial, but protection. Protection from what would happen if humanity remembered where it truly came from. A smaller chamber, warm and dim, lined with portraits of saints who died nameless. On a central pedestal lies a codex bound in white leather, its cover embossed with the Chi Rho, the oldest Christian symbol. This is Liber Obscura, the Book of the Hidden Ones. Inside are annotations from early church councils, transcripts, theological arguments, and records of the Nicene debates. Here the tone is not reverent, it is political. One entry reads, "The question of the divine nature is not one of truth, but of unity." Another, "To choose what is holy, one must decide what is human." It becomes clear that early Christianity was not born from revelation alone, but negotiation. Words weighed for stability, not solely for salvation. Christ's divinity, his relationship to God, the nature of the Trinity, all were debated, edited, and sealed. And in these pages, one can sense the weight of compromise, a gospel of power crafted for empire. Beyond the known rooms lies one door unmarked. Its seal is older than the rest, bearing neither Latin nor Greek, but an archaic sigil, perhaps Hebrew, perhaps something older. The Swiss Guard call it Porta Mutus, the silent door. It is said even the popes do not enter here. No catalog lists what lies within. Some claim it contains the chronicles of Peter, eyewitness accounts of Christ never canonized. Others say it holds records from beyond Scripture, letters from exiled mystics, maps of the antediluvian world, or prophecies locked away for fear of self-fulfillment. When the air conditioning hum stops, when no one walks the halls, guards have sworn they hear murmurs from behind that door, like pages turning on their own, like voices repeating prayers in a forgotten tongue. It may be imagination, or maybe the archives themselves are alive, breathing the weight of what humanity chose to forget. Each room deeper than the last, each truth heavier. And yet, in the end, the vault is not just a container of secrets. It is a mirror. Every forbidden document, every sealed decree, every erased name reflects a pattern we all share: to hide what we fear to understand. The Vatican did not create the vault to imprison truth. It created it to manage revelation. Because revelation, like fire, can illuminate or destroy. The farther one descends, the more one realizes. The true danger is not in what is written on the pages, but in what would happen if those pages were believed. When the last door closes behind you, silence becomes a weight, the kind of silence that hums with awareness, like the pause between lightning and thunder. And in that silence, the realization dawns. The Vatican did not destroy the forbidden. It preserved it. The greatest misunderstanding in history is this: that secrecy means suppression. But here, in the deepest corridors beneath Rome, one begins to see that secrecy is a form of worship, a vow, a confession that truth is too powerful to be owned. Inside these archives are not the ashes of heresy, but its relics, carefully cataloged, guarded by generations of archivists who may not even know what they are protecting. Why would the Church keep what it once condemned? Why preserve the very manuscripts it sought to silence? Because destruction erases the proof of power, but preservation, even in chains, admits that something real was once there. A burned book dies, a sealed book waits. In the vault, every lock is an admission that there exists something worth locking away. Perhaps the true purpose of the Vatican Vault is not to conceal truth from humanity, but to prevent humanity from misusing it. The old mystics of Alexandria believed that divine knowledge must be given in doses, that untempered revelation could destroy a mind not yet prepared to receive it. They called it gnosis, the inner light. To hand such light to the unready was to invite madness. The Vatican, in its way, may have inherited this logic. For what if the documents below the basilica do not merely describe forbidden truths, but invoke them? What if knowledge at its highest level carries presence, a resonance that reshapes the one who reads it? There are stories, whispered among certain Jesuit scholars, that some texts in the vault are not read, but heard, that when they are recited, the air itself vibrates, and those who have listened too long begin to dream of symbols that burn behind their eyelids. No one knows if these accounts are true, but perhaps the Vatican's silence is mercy. Every civilization hides what it fears. The Egyptians sealed their books of the dead within tombs. The Greeks buried their mysteries in Eleusis. The Jews veiled the name of God. The Vatican Vault is the Christian continuation of this tradition, a fortress for what should not be spoken until humanity matures enough to bear it. What is kept beneath Rome, then, is not simply theology or history, but pattern, a record of how humanity interacts with revelation, the rhythm of forgetting and remembering, of building faith, losing it, and rediscovering it in new language. It is said that deep within the archive lies a collection known only by code, tabula calorum, the tablets of heaven, unconfirmed, uncatalogued, unverified. Yet the rumors persist. Scholars who have heard whispers of its existence describe it as a set of texts mapping the cyclical ages of humanity, from creation to fall to rebirth. Each age ending not in apocalypse, but in reset, a flood, a fire, a silence. And always before each new age, the keepers of the vault seal away the remnants of the old world to protect what must one day be rediscovered. If that is true, then the Vatican secret is not about religion at all. It is about continuity, about the guardianship of human memory through every collapse. But power and purity rarely remain companions. For every pope who sought to protect, another sought to control. What begins as preservation becomes politics. To own the keys to revelation is to own the narrative of salvation. Somewhere along the centuries, the vault became not just a sanctuary of wisdom, but a weapon of silence, a tool to define what humanity may call holy and what must be forgotten. There are memos within the known archives from the 16th century, instructing scribes to purify certain texts before copying, to replace words, to soften meanings, to make the divine story safe for the common soul. And that is where preservation crosses into control. The truth is not destroyed. It is translated into obedience. There is an old Vatican proverb, every lock is a lesson. To understand the vault, one must understand the theology of restraint. St. Augustine once wrote that divine revelation is like sunlight through a stained glass window. Too bright, too pure, unless filtered through color and story. Perhaps the Vatican believes it is the glass, the locks, the guards, the rituals of restricted access. All of it becomes a liturgy of limitation, a way of saying, not yet. In this sense, the Vatican Vault is less a place of conspiracy and more a cathedral of delay. It is a spiritual quarantine, ensuring that knowledge enters the world only when humanity is ready. But readiness is subjective. Who decides when the world is worthy? Who holds the key to worthiness? These questions echo through the marble corridors like prayers unanswered. Perhaps the most chilling thought of all is this. The Church may have kept these secrets not because they threaten faith, but because they confirm it in ways the world is not prepared to accept. What if the records hidden below do not deny the divine, but reveal it in terrifying literal form? What if the angels of Scripture were not metaphors, but beings recorded in ink and witness? What if the sons of God and the Ioi, daughters of men, were not allegories but events? And what if those lineages never fully vanished, but continued, quietly in plain sight, shaping history from within the Church itself? If such truths were proven, how would humanity react? Would we kneel in awe or riot in fear? The Vatican's silence may not be tyranny, it may be protection, not of itself, but of us. Because once a secret leaves its guardian, it ceases to be sacred. In the dim light of that underground sanctum, one begins to see the pattern with frightening clarity. The vault is not a grave, it is a chrysalis. Every locked chamber, every sealed envelope, every red-stamped decree is part of a vast, centuries-long ritual, a ritual of containment and waiting. Waiting for consciousness to evolve, waiting for humanity to look upon the face of God without fracturing. When a truth is locked away, it is not erased from history. It is placed in incubation. It waits for the moment when the collective heart of humanity beats in rhythm with understanding. That may take centuries, or millennia, but the vault endures, a patient, silent womb for revelation. At the lowest level of the archive, where the temperature never changes and the air feels older than memory, there is said to be a single inscription on the stone wall. Not Latin, not Greek, just a line carved in silence. Veritas non perditur, sed dormit. Truth is not lost, it sleeps. Perhaps that is the true secret of the Vatican Vault, that what lies hidden is not gone. It waits, not for permission, not for curiosity, but for consciousness. If the Vatican Vault exists as stone and steel, then its shadow exists within every human mind. Because secrecy, the act of hiding, is not unique to the Church. It is a universal instinct. Every civilization has its vaults, and every soul has its archives. Each one a repository of what it cannot yet bear to confront. Each one a whisper saying, "You are not ready." And so the Vatican's chambers of parchment and silence become more than a historical curiosity. They become a mirror. For what is faith, if not the courage to believe that there are truths larger than comprehension? And what is secrecy, if not the quiet acknowledgement that revelation must be earned? The true architecture of the vault is psychological. It reflects the way humanity stores memory, layers of knowledge, emotion, and trauma sealed behind mental gates. In the language of mystics, the human heart is the first archive. It holds the contradictions that reason cannot resolve. Love and fear, faith and doubt, divinity and dust. We lock away what frightens us, our anger, our shame, our glimpses of the infinite. The Church built its vault beneath stone. We build ours beneath skin. And perhaps both serve the same purpose, to guard what is sacred until we are mature enough to see it without desecration. When one reads of the Archivum Secretum, one is not just reading about the Vatican, one is reading about the human condition. We are all archivists of our own forbidden histories. The Church believed that by containing dangerous knowledge, it could protect humanity from collapse. But in doing so, it also created the illusion of control. Control is the great temptation of every power, political, religious, or personal. It is the belief that truth can be managed, portioned, distributed like sacrament to the obedient. Yet truth does not obey. It leaks through cracks. It finds ways to reappear in art, in myth, in dreams. Consider how suppressed gospels resurfaced centuries later in Egyptian sands. How heretical ideas once burned now define entire sciences. How stories buried by empires return as prophecy, myth, or revelation. The pattern is clear. What is hidden by authority eventually reemerges through imagination. Thus the vault, no matter how vast, can never be truly sealed, because the mind of humanity is itself a vault in rebellion. Every artist, philosopher, and seeker becomes a thief in that temple, stealing back fragments of what was once called heresy. There is a deeper paradox within this story, that forgetting is part of faith. If every secret were revealed at once, faith would vanish. Belief survives only in the space between knowing and not knowing. The Church, perhaps unconsciously, has preserved that tension. To believe without seeing, to love without proof, to revere mystery. These are not weaknesses, but sacred acts of balance. And yet, when taken too far, they become chains. When mystery is hoarded rather than honored, the divine becomes property instead of presence. The vault, then, is both protector and prisoner of God. It shields the sacred from corruption, but also hides it from transformation. For faith to evolve, the walls must someday crack. In every age, humanity has rediscovered a fragment of its own forgotten fire. Writing, mathematics, astronomy, the microscope, the telescope. Each invention is a reopening of the vault, a moment when the divine intelligence of creation peeks through the human mind. And every time we fear it, we feared the printing press, for it made holy words common. We feared the telescope, for it displaced the earth from the center. We fear artificial intelligence today, for it mirrors creation itself. The pattern repeats: revelation, fear, repression, rediscovery. The flame cannot be extinguished, only passed from hidden hands to open ones. Perhaps the Vatican Vault, with its sealed tomes and guarded corridors, is simply one iteration of this eternal rhythm. The rhythm by which truth both hides and reveals itself. The sacred function of secrecy. Secrecy, when stripped of corruption, has always served a sacred function. It is not the enemy of truth, but its gestation. In the ancient mysteries, initiates were forbidden to speak not because the gods demanded obedience, but because language could not yet hold what they had seen. Some truths are experiential, not intellectual. They can only be lived. The Vatican, knowingly or not, continues this ritual on a global scale. It guards symbols that must first be understood symbolically, not literally, because the danger is not that people will doubt God, but that they will mistake metaphor for fact, and in doing so, kill the living mystery. The vault keeps the myth alive by keeping it incomplete. Revelation and responsibility. If the day ever comes when the Vatican throws open its doors and light floods every corridor, the question will not be, what have they hidden? It will be, are we ready to read without weaponizing? Because every revelation demands responsibility. Truth can enlighten, or it can inflame. And the difference lies not in the truth itself, but in the consciousness of the one who receives it. That is why perhaps, just perhaps, the Church's centuries of silence have been less about fear and more about timing. A holding pattern until the human species learns to handle the divine, not as conquest, but communion. The vault within stand, now in imagination at the entrance once more. Behind you, sunlight, crowds, the world of form and doctrine. Before you, darkness, stillness, the world of memory and mystery. The door between them is not metal, it is you. The mind is the archive, the heart is the key, and the truth you seek in Rome has always been waiting inside the corridors of your own consciousness. Unburned, unlost, merely waiting for the courage to be read. Every time you confront your shadow, you open a vault. Every time you forgive, you unseal a door. Every time you dare to look beyond dogma, you read a page that was once forbidden. The Vatican may guard the world's written secrets, but you guard the unwritten ones. And perhaps that is where the real archive begins. The stairway back to the surface feels longer than the descent. Each step echoes like a heartbeat, heavy with the weight of what cannot be unseen. The air grows warmer, thinner, filled once again with the sounds of the living world. And yet something follows you from below, a silence that breathes. When the final door of the vault seals shut behind you, the realization settles quietly, like dust upon marble. You were never searching for hidden texts. You were searching for the courage to face them. Because the secret of the Vatican Vault is not in its documents, nor in the ink that stains them. It is in the reason they were locked away. Every parchment, every seal, every act of censorship whispers the same truth. Humanity has always feared the divine, not because it is false, but because it is too real. Imagine standing again in the square of St. Peter's Basilica. Tourists swarm, cameras flash, the world spins on as if nothing sleeps beneath their feet. But now you see differently. Beneath the chants and incense, beneath the Latin prayers and the golden altars, lies a truth older than Christianity itself, that light and shadow are not enemies. They are co-creators. Without the shadow of secrecy, there would be no hunger for revelation. Without the hunger, no faith. Without faith, no meaning. Perhaps the Church, in its guarded wisdom or its sacred fear, understood this, that mystery must survive, even at the cost of suspicion, that humanity must always have something just beyond reach. For the pursuit itself is what refines the soul. As you walk away from the Vatican walls, the setting sun stains the city gold. The dome glows like a halo against the dying light, and suddenly the metaphor becomes clear. Every age has its vaults, every civilization has sealed doors, and every person their own archive of forgotten grace. The story of the vault is not about the Church, it is about us. Our endless struggle to balance knowing and believing, intellect and awe, curiosity and reverence. The Church built walls of stone. We build walls of certainty. Both are prisons for the infinite. But the key has always been the same. To open not with violence, but with humility. To seek not to conquer the sacred, but to listen to it. For truth is not something revealed to those who demand it. It is something that unfolds before those who are willing to wait. In the end, the Vatican Vault remains closed. And maybe it should. Because some mysteries are not meant to be solved, they are meant to be lived. To live with mystery is to live with God. To live without it is to mistake knowledge for wisdom. Perhaps that is why, after all these centuries, the Church still guards its doors. Not out of arrogance, but out of ancient memory. The memory of what happens when humanity stares too directly into the light. The vault remains, the locks remain, but so does the yearning. And it is that yearning, not the answers, that keeps faith alive. Truth is not lost. It sleeps. When you whisper those words now, they no longer sound like accusation. They sound like prayer. Because in the end, every human heart is a Vatican. Every breath, a guarded page. Every life, a secret waiting for the right moment to awaken. And when it does, when your own vault opens, you will understand that the greatest secret the Church ever kept was the one that could never be written. That divinity was never in the documents. It was in you all along. There is a moment after revelation when the mind quiets and the heart begins to speak. That is where this story leaves you. Not in certainty, but in stillness. We have walked the corridors beneath the Vatican, felt the weight of doors that refuse to open, heard the silence of knowledge sleeping in the dark. And yet, even now, somewhere inside you, a different kind of key has begun to turn. Because perhaps the purpose of these stories, of forbidden history, is not to expose institutions or unravel conspiracies, but to remind you that truth was never lost. It was only hidden, in plain sight, within the silence between your own breaths. So tonight, when the world grows quiet and the lights go dim, remember the vault, not as a place of secrets, but as a mirror of your own becoming. There are doors inside you still unopened. There are pages within you still unread. And somewhere in the deepest chamber of your soul, a single candle still burns, waiting for the courage of your attention. If you have found meaning in this journey, if you have felt the pull of something ancient whispering through the walls of time, then stay with us. Because beyond this vault lie other gates, other hidden rooms of human memory, lost civilizations, forgotten gods, truths that were buried not to be erased, but to be rediscovered by those who dare to remember. This was the Vatican Vault, secrets the Church locked away. You've walked through silence. You've glimpsed the power of what sleeps beneath belief. Now step back into the light and carry the question with you. What other truths have we mistaken for myths? And what other myths might yet prove to be true? Welcome to Forbidden History. The next gate awaits. 8.